Okay, hi, good afternoon. My name is Sunny Yudkov, and I am the director of the Mayran Institute for Yiddish Culture here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to today's event, Yerusha, Bringing the Archive to Life, with musician and archivist Eleonore Bizunski. Founded in 2010, the Mayran Institute works hard to educate students, faculty, and the wider community about the vitality of modern Yiddish culture, music, literature, history, and art. At the heart of the Institute is the remarkable collection of Yiddish 78s donated by Sherry Mayran, some 9,000 of which are now almost completely cataloged in our Mills Music Library. After I finish speaking, I'll put the link to the collection in our chat box. Today's event marks the continuation of a tradition of sound salons that the Mayran Institute has hosted and has now resumed in Zoom format this year. A note on that, I want to mention that the event today is being recorded. And I also want to request that everyone remain muted. And also, if someone accidentally unmutes, there are a number of hosts here and we will mute you, just as a heads up. Okay. So Zoom etiquette aside, I want to welcome you with a toast. To life, l'chaim. I need only say these 5 words and the musical of Fiddler on the Roof will likely already be ringing in your ears. I can say, though, that it comes as a repeated disappointment every time I teach Tevye the Dairyman when students learn that there is not a single fiddler on any roof in Shalom Aleicham's original. That was a nod to Marc Chagall. In fact, there are no musical numbers at all. It's a collection of short stories. And indeed, part of bringing Yiddish culture to life involves a series of negotiations between expectations and historical truth, between what the archive includes and what today's audience expects. Of course, working with Yiddish archives is not a series of disappointments, to the contrary. As someone who loves doing archival research, I stand ready to romanticize those moments when covered in old book dust and freezing, archives are uniformly freezing, you find that Yiddish document, that letter, those minutes from that meeting in which the historical narrative or cultural scene that you're reconstructing finally makes sense, finally comes to life, and finally gives you insight into how the material is part of a larger Yerusha, inheritance or legacy of Yiddish culture. Which is why I'm so happy today to be able to welcome Eleonore Bizunski. In both her career as a klezmer performer and as sound archivist, she works to help make sense, clarify, and see anew the history of Yiddish folk song, klezmer music, and Jewish culture. And Jewish culture. In other words, she brings the Yerusha of Yiddish song and Jewish experience to life. Born into a Yiddish-speaking family in Paris, Eleonore has spent the past 15 years collecting, performing, and researching Yiddish songs. Her albums are many, and I will refer you to her website, which I'll put in the chat box also shortly, for a full discography, including 2016's Remarkable Yerusha, which is a repertoire of Yiddish folk songs collected from folklore archives. Eleonore is a trained vocalist and classical violinist, having performed with such acclaimed musicians as Michael Alper, Lisa Goodkin, and Michael Winograd, to name only a few. At present, she's an associate sound archivist at the YIVO and project coordinator of the Ruth Rubin Legacy online collection. And we'll be hearing more about that legacy of Ruth Rubin's archive, as well as those of Moshe Biragovsky and Zusman Kisselkopf today. Eleonore is also pursuing doctoral work at the École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales in Paris, and is a recent recipient of the New York State Council on the Arts Folks Art Apprenticeship. I could continue for too long with her performance biography and accolades, so let me conclude with thanks. First, I want to thank the Mossy Weinstein Center for Jewish Studies for supporting the event, with special thanks to its director, Tony Michaels, Associate Director Gwen Walker, and Outreach Coordinator Amy Goblersch for institutional and administrative support. And second, I want to thank Eleonore in advance for the insights about the Yiddish music archive that she's about to share with us today. So allow me to be the designated clapper and welcoming Eleonore.
Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction with a lot of heart for the archive. I feel the same, and I want to thank you again, Sunny, for inviting me, and thank Amy Gobrecht and the Mayran Institute for having me. It's a real pleasure and an honor, and really wonderful to be able to present for this esteemed crowd this material. So I will start by sharing my screen and doing some Zoom acrobacy. So you should be able to see this now, and I'm going to do this. And hopefully things are going to be smooth with the technique, with the technology, which we all know now is not a given. Okay, I hope you can see. So in the early 1910s, the Jewish Historical and Ethnographic Society in St. Petersburg initiated a wide-scale expedition into the Pale of Settlement, the territory within the Russian Empire where Jews had to reside. The expedition aimed at collecting folklore from Jews in an effort to preserve cultural treasures that were being perceived at risk of getting lost. The expedition, I feel like I'm maybe a little bit freezed. Is that correct? Or can you all hear me well?
You're a little delayed, but we can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm gonna be doing it slowly. I think the screen sharing is a little heavy on the computer. So the expedition founded by the Baron Horace Ginsburg was led by the well-known Jewish folklorist and writer, revolutionary, and author of the famous play The Dybbuk, Shlomo Ansky, or Shlomo Rapoport. With him, figures of Jewish culture were taking part in the collecting effort, like the composer and music expert Joel Engel and the folklorist Zusman or Zinovy Kisselgoff, while the artist Solomon Yudovin was collecting artworks. I can't see my own PowerPoint, so it's a little hard to see what I'm doing. Oh, it works. Okay, great. That's an example of Yudovin's artwork. Between 1911 and 1914, when the First World War broke out and the expedition had to stop, the members of the expeditions collected, among answers to an extensive questionnaire about the life cycle, hundreds of recordings made on wax cylinders. Kisselgoff's catalog itself, which is only one part of the, Kisselgoff is sitting on the right with a kid on his lap on this picture. And so his catalog itself contains close to 2,000 titles, among which a few hundreds were recently accessed and made available by the Klezmer Institute, and which I will talk more about. But there's a whole collective effort of making this material available. It's a beautiful crowdsourcing enterprise. I would like to play for you one of those recordings collected by the Ansky expedition with a song which you may recognize called Bale Boste Zisinke, or Sweet Hostess, or Sweet Lady of the House, collected from an unknown performer near Ruzhin in the region of Kiev in 1912. And hopefully this works too. So I would like now to perform a song from Kisselgoff's collection that was published in 1915, I think, by the Jewish Folk Music Society in St. Petersburg, in Petrograd. And I will go from this tune called the Volech, which is another name for Freilachs, or joyous dance, into a song that was collected by Ruth Rubin and I will talk more about Ruth Rubin later, in 1961 in Montreal, from the wonderful Anna Berkowitz. And to do that, I will actually stop sharing my screen for a moment. So she collected this from Anna Berkowitz in Montreal, and the song is called Kumarois zu mir mein Liebste. It's a poem by Chaim Nachman Bialik, and it says, "Come out to me, my love. I bring you good news. At my house, beautiful flowers sprout and bloom. How beautiful. Come on, let's go together. In the morning at the door, fresh, cool, quiet winds begin calmly kissing the mezuzah of my house. Come on, my love, come out. The grace of God comes flying on array, and every source sings with the valley that spring has arrived, they say. The cherry blossoms are as white as snow." Kumarois zu mir, mein Liebste. Kumarois, Kumarois. Ich bring für dir a gute Besuche bei mein Haus, bei mein Haus. Sprotzen blühen schön die Blumen, ach wie schön, ach wie schön. Komm, lass mir beide gehen und bring morgen beide Tiere heben non, frische Kiele, stille Windle, heben non. Still zwischen die Mezuzah von mein Haus, von mein Haus. Komm, der Thank you. There is this new these new moments. There should be a name for those moments where we don't hear the applause, but they're there. We feel them. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen again, and hopefully still works. And before I talk more about Ruth Rubin, I would like to speak a little bit about the most direct hair of Ansky and Kisselgoff. And I will speak more about Ruth Rubin, who is also an heir of them. Uh-oh, it's not where I want it to be. Okay, hopefully I can get back quickly. Yeah, so the Ruth Rubin collection was digitized at Eve when I'm going to talk about this, but the most direct heir of Ansky and Kisselgoff was Moishe Beregovsky. He was a pioneer, and I'm trying to get to where I want to be in this PowerPoint. So just indulge, stay with me for a minute. Technology. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I will do better next time. I could start the slide where I want and not at the beginning. But now I'm still waiting to get to where I want. It's not going very fast. Okay, getting there. All right, so Moishe Beregovsky was a pioneer in modern Jewish ethnomusicology, and he's the one who introduced the term klezmer music to speak about the music itself, the style of music, rather than to speak about what it meant before in Yiddish, the musician, and specifically the professional musicians professional musicians for the weddings, etc. So between 1929 and 1947, he was the only one to collect Jewish music on wax cylinders, except for his contemporary Sofia Magid, who was working independently in St. Petersburg, and I don't touch on her collection today, but it's also a very interesting collection. By the mid 1940s, he had amassed 7,000 musical documents in his collection, including the cylinders from the Ansky expedition and Zusman Kisselgoff's collection, which he catalogued. Only a portion of his of the 5 volumes he had prepared for publication was published, including the one on Jewish instrumental folk music, which is where the next tunes I will play come from, and Mark Slobin translated and published some of the tunes from different of his planned publications. And during the pandemic, a lot of projects started around the legacy of Moishe Beregovsky, starting with a Facebook group, the Beregovsky Online Forum, that Craig Uderman, a violinist from Berlin, who lives now in Berlin, started. And a lot of conversation has happened. We've been reading his articles in Yiddish in a reading group, and I will talk more about other of those projects. But now I would like to play 2 skotchnes. Skotchnes are, in this case, listening tunes, 2 listening tunes rather than dance tunes, although they have a little bit of a dancey feel to them. I learned those tunes from my friend Pete Truszewski, and with whom I formed the duo Klezmographers, and he pointed me to the reference recording for this, which is so what we would call a revival. Oh, I'm going to stop my screen share again. What we would call a revival recording from Joel Rubin on his album Midnight Prayer, and he put together those two Skocnes, and I also recorded them together with my band called Yerushe. Thank you. Such a pleasure. So what do I have next? Yes, I want to tell you about Ruth Rubin. And this time I'm going to try to share my screen more efficiently. So not like this, because now I can't see you anymore. Okay. It's a learning curve. I mean, weird times. Okay, here we go. And now I'm gonna click the right button. Yes, it worked. So Ruth Rubin, stellar figure in the Yiddish folk song revival, was born in 1906, and she grew up in Montreal. Her family was from Chotin in Bessarabia, and she devoted her life to the collection and preservation of Yiddish folklore, poetic and musical. She collected around 2,500 songs and interviews from groups and individuals, and published books, songbooks, and articles, presented conference papers and lecture recitals, and was a prolific recording artist in her own right. The centerpiece of the Ruth Rubin archive, held at the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research, is 135 volume collection of field recordings containing over 2,500 songs, assembled from 78 RPM acetate discs, which you can see on this image on the left, reel-to-reel tapes and cassettes recorded by Ruth Rubin from 1946 through the 1970s. The archive also contains some sound document of Rubin's numerous lectures, concerts, and radio interviews, as well as personal notebooks, articles, manuscripts, correspondence, books, and records. And maybe Sunny, you can share the link to the website. So this is a really amazing that now you can go online and listen to all those songs. And one of her informant was the folklorist, song collector, songwriter, and poet, member of the so-called Paper Brigade in the Vilna Ghetto, and partisan Shmerke Kachaginsky. Here you can see him sitting with his friend, the great poet Avram Sutzkever, in the Vilna Ghetto. And I wanted to play you recording of Ruth Rubin and Kachaginsky singing together the song Juliet, Juliet, Beise Winden, frolic, you angry winds, and they just sing the beginning together.
Hullet, hullet, beise Winden, freibar die Welt. Breit die Zweigen von die Bäume, tut was gefällt. Breit die Zweigen von die Bäume, tut was gefällt.
So this is all. This is all we have of this duo. But there is a lot more. You can look up by performer, and then on the website, and you can listen to all of the recordings by Shmerke Kachaginsky, who was also recorded by Ben Stonehill, and that collection is available on the Center for Traditional Music and Dance website. Yeah, it's a really beautiful part of the archives. Oh, sorry, this is too early for this. I'm gonna get out of here and stop share for now. So I would like to perform a song from the Ruth Rubin collection, a Heartbroken Tailor song, followed by another tune from the Berezovsky collection called Dobra Noc, which means good night. It's a good night tune for a certain moment of the wedding ritual, which was notated, as Verygowski noted it, by violinist named Sachnowski. Deep in the heart of the forest, a young tree is standing, and its branches are blooming, but my poor tailor's heart is aching. Tief in Wäldele steht der Bäumele und die Zweige blühen und die Zweige blühen und bei mir im Schneider tut mein Herz ziehen. Und bei mir im Schneider tut mein Herz ziehen. Auf dem Bäumele wächst der Zweigele und die Blätter zwittern, und die Blätter zwittern, und bei mir im Schneiderhof zieht mein Herz zu meinen Liedern, und bei mir im Schneiderhof zieht mein Herz zu meinen Liedern. Auf dem Zweigele steht ein Vögele, und das Vögele pischet, und das Vögele pischet, und bei mir im Schneiderhof mein schwach Herzele tristschet, und bei mir im Schneiderhof mein schwach Herzele tristschet. Thank you. I will go, thank you. I will go into another tune that is found both in Ruth Rubin and Berezovsky collections. It's also a Taylor song. And it's actually two songs. And that let's say it's a folklorized version. Basically, I took both versions and I made my own, which is something you can do with folk songs. So I placed myself in the continuation of that chain, and I intertwined those two Taylor songs with Hasidic melodies that were recorded on a 1778 RPM record by the Boy-Berry-Ker Capelier, which was led by Hersch Gross, and the violinist in the band, Berish Katz, was also recorded by Ruth Rubin later. And these are some of the rare recordings we have of traditional klezmer violin. So they're very precious. Although on the Hasidic Nigunim on this recording, it's a whole band playing. And I will read you a translation of the songs by Joshua Waletsky. With a needle, without a needle, I sew most creditably. I sit cross-legged, for my work is sweet. I sew and sew all week long, and come out a fancy hole. But when I have a needle and a thread, I come out with the most beautiful clothes. On Shabbos, I go out, as it is written, wearing clothes I have sewn myself. This is how a tailor sews. This is how. He sews the entire week and earns a bagel with a hole. He sews and sews and sews and sews and has plates, but not any bread. Last year, may not happen today. We toiled from 8 to 8, but thanks to the strike, we work no more from 8 to 8. I guess we do need more strikes, actually, but anyway, that's another issue. I hear a lot of people working way too much these days. Okay. Other topic. Not for here. Not for now. Or maybe, yes. Mitanodlona nodl, neich mir bekovet godl. Sitzen sitz ich mir a fies, weil mein Arbeit ist zuckersüß. Mitanodlona nodl, neich mir bekovet godl. Ich nei, a ganze Woch, nei mir ois a Pariser Loch, mit a nodl, neich mir bekovet godl. Und als ich hoch an Nodel mit der Pfoden, nei mir aus den schönste Boden, mit a nodel, ich mir bekovet godl. Shabbos, geh ich heraus, mit dem Posset steh, mit die eigene Godim, was hab mit a nodl, כבד גודל. Otta Zoyne Schneider, Otta Zoyne gut, Otta Zoyne Schneider, Otta Zoyne doch, Neit a ganze Woch, verdient a Geld mit a Loch, Neit a ganze Woch, verdient a Geld mit a Loch, Otta Zoyne Schneider, Otta Zoyne gut, Otta Zoyne Schneider, Otta Zoyne doch, Neit Otka doch, es nit ken breiter, Neit Otka doch, es nit ken breit, Otta Zoyne Schneider, Otta Zoyne gut, Otta Zoyne Schneider, Otta Zoyne doch. Vor a Jahr nit heim gedacht, hab mir gearbeitet die Nacht bis acht. Vor a Jahr nit heim gedacht, mir haben gearbeitet Nacht in acht. Otta Zoyne Schneider, Otta Zoyne gut, Otta Zoyne Schneider, Otta Zoyne doch. Aber die Struck, sie hat dann gemacht, mir arbeiten schon nicht für Nacht bis acht. Aber die Struck, sie hat dann gemacht, mir arbeiten schon nicht für Nacht bis acht. Otta Zoyne Schneider, Otta Zoyne gut, Otta Zoyne Schneider, Otta Zoyne doch. you. So I will end this program with a medley of dance tunes that I want to talk about a little bit. And I will actually even share my screen again for that. It's really a whole enterprise. So the first part of the medley is part of Berezovsky's unpublished volume of Nigunim, and I learned it through this really amazing project, the Berezovsky Tischnigin Archive project that was started by Ilana Kravitz at the beginning of the pandemic last year. Yeah. And it involved 35 violinists, klezmer violinists from all around the world. And the goal was to record all of the tunes from this manuscript that had never been published, and Ilana had access to it, and she couldn't just share the whole thing, but she could share a few tunes to everyone, and we collectively recorded the volume. So that was very fun, and this is how I learned the first tune of this medley. And the second one is a share, so sort of a square dance that I learned that comes from another collection, Kostakovsky collection, which was it's a book that was published in 1915 for professional klezmer musicians in the US. It was published in New York. And the third one is an Angé from the Kisselgov collection, which was digitized by the violinist Jutta Bogen. And I thank her for this. And it's also part of a really incredible project. I see that Judith Nemtanu is here. She's done a lot with this project, and can't see everyone, but it's another really amazing collective crowdsourcing project called the Kisselgov-Makonovetsky Digital Manuscript Project, which aims at digitally notating and studying the hundreds of tunes recently retrieved from the Vernadsky Library and now made available by the Klezmer Institute. So since January, over 250 tunes were digitally notated from manuscripts into digital notation, and there are other projects from the Klezmer Institute around this repertoire. It's really very interesting. Everyone can participate if you have the skills to do it if you know how to write music in a computer, the computer music editing thing. You can participate, and it has also sparked a lot of conversation around the repertoire and around a lot of questions for the study of this music, and it's been fascinating to discuss with colleagues from all over the world over this past month. So I will play this Berezovsky Nigun number 144. So we're like in this prisoner's joke. We keep klezmer musicians keep talking in numbers of tune in the collections. So Berezovsky Nigun number 144, volume in the fourth volume, and then the Cher, and then the Angé. Sorry, I got distracted. So. Yes. No, that's not the one I want to start with. Sorry. Right. First is the Nigun. Thank you very much. Et voilà. um,
Thank you, Eleanor. Oh, can I be the designated clapper so you can get some claps? I can't imagine what it's like to play music and have that silence, but hopefully the happy faces that I could see were that the vibes were coming through.
Yeah, I see some of them, which is great.
And Eleanor, if you want to take a moment, I'll say that I'm happy to collect questions and then to ventriloquize them, if I may. So you can send your questions directly to me using the chat function, and we can take a minute just so I can collect some questions. I'm sure there are going to be a few duplicates, common concerns.
I'm going to just copy paste again a bunch of links of things I've mentioned, and you can go through them all, figure out which ones are which. Back.
Thank you. Okay, coming in.
And also a couple that I actually didn't mention, but that I will also put in. Just because they're great resources, especially when it comes to Yiddish songs. Thank you.
So I'll start us off. There are a few general and some more specific questions coming in. But the first question I had is maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your process of choosing which song from the archive. It seems like the archives you presented us have so much material. So you could walk us through what draws you to a particular song. Is it music? Is it narrative? You know, what catches you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and there are actually several answers to it. One of them is familiarity, like for example, the Mitanodl is a song that I heard growing up, and sometimes there's just this connection with the songs. And my grandfather was a tailor, and I sung this with him, and so it's I always think of him. And also the opposite, being not familiar with songs. And this is something I really love to do, is to present material that is not very famous, because when it comes to Yiddish song, a lot of time we hear the same songs over and over again, and then we have this impression that it's a very small musical world, which is not true. And now with the new discoveries that we recently made with the klezmer repertoire, it's also very, actually a very wide repertoire of tunes and of genres and of contexts. So yeah, when it comes to songs, yes, the story, the poetry attracts me. The melodies, sometimes it depends. And for the tunes, it could be either they're sort of like emotional. Something I connect with emotionally, or it can be their dance feel, or their melody, their. I mean, it depends, and sometimes it's also someone taught it. A lot of the times with the klezmer repertoire, I also learned the tunes from someone specific, and so there's this chain that happens, and so you associate the tunes. It is true for songs as well. I mean, you associate the songs that you learn with the person who taught it to you, and it's part of this tradition.
Nice. Yeah, thank you. And another question we have is from Sang Jung, who's a student of mine. So I'm happy to have a question from students. I want to note there are a number of students here, and you should feel comfortable asking questions. You're welcome to. One of the questions about your instrumentation, do you also play other instruments? And adding on here, is the music particular to your violin, or are they? Do you engage with this music with other instruments?
Well, I picked up a little bit the ukulele during the pandemic, so now I can accompany myself on some things with the ukulele, but not really otherwise. Yeah, uh, I mostly, and I mean, the violin can really be like an accompanying instrument. It can be its own voice. It can be a drum. Um, but so it has all these possibilities. And now that we are just by ourselves, mostly doing music by ourselves, it's really nice to have that possibility to develop accompanying myself on the violin. But I miss my I miss my music partners. It's yeah, different.
Another question's come in from Sherry Marin, who we have to thank for the Marin Institute. So it's lovely that she was able to join us. And I'm going to be stretching my musical pronunciation here. Sherry writes, I missed the source of the two instrumental tunes intermixed in the Taylor medley. I know them from a Boyberger Capella record and wonder if there was another source.
Not that I know of. That's the source I also have. And I don't know of another source. I mean, I think there may actually be a written source for the first one. I'm not sure actually. Yeah, and part of the collective effort during the pandemic has been to try to cross-reference the tunes. Like now there is a spreadsheet that we share with the community that's called Berezovsky and the City, a humorous name for the spreadsheet, where we try to figure out, what printed material corresponds to what recording. It's a whole thing generally with Yiddish music to try to connect the dots, and hopefully technology will help us do that better too, as we move forward.
Yeah, I'm happy you showed all this crowdsourcing websites, and hopefully maybe there are some here who might be interested in contributing. Another question comes in from, and forgive my pronunciation, Francis Schrag, asking, is Yiddish music popular in France today?
Somewhat. I mean, it's I don't I'm not sure what to answer. First, I've been living in the US for 5 years, so I followed a little bit less. But I mean, there are a few bands in France. There are a few workshops happening. Marthe Desrosières, who was here before, maybe she's still here, has organized since the early 2000s workshops and classes at the Maison de la Culture Yiddish, which have really created the impulse for a community around klezmer, and then other people have started doing other workshops. So there is definitely an activity, and France and Paris especially was a big Yiddish speaking hub. So there is a lot of Yiddish culture in Paris.
Yeah. Maya Brown asks, how is it different to be an artist in the archives rather than just a scholar? How is it different to be an artist versus a scholar in the archives?
Well, at YIVO, it just feels very normal because the sound archive at YIVO was created by Henry Saposnik, who is a musician and a scholar, and
the former director of the Marin Institute.
Yeah, yep. Absolutely, and he continues doing amazing work with Yiddish music archives. So at the YIVO Sound Archive, it's been the case always that archivists were actually generally musicians or performers, and we're sort of trained on the job to do the archival work. So there was always this engagement with the material from a very sort of intimate level from the archivist there. So it's very inspiring for me because it nourishes both sides, and it's very exciting to have access to all of this and to be able to give access to all of this.
Hi, Judith Nemtanu asks, are there indications to the harmonies, or is that your addition when you accompany yourself?
Most of the time it is my addition, yes. On the songs I played, yeah, I mean, and I tend to choose very simple, very simple harmonies, which is partly my taste and also my skills, because we're limited by what we know how to do, also.
Nick Collier asks, has klezmer, Yiddish, or Yiddish music exerted much influence on jazz or other genres of popular music?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think it's, well, I mean, klezmer, I think of klezmer just as Yiddish is a language of fusion. Klezmer is a music of fusion, and it's um, always been in contact and exchanging with the cultures around. I mean, this last tune I played is very Romanian sounding and um, very Bukovina sounding. So that's Christina Crowder, who is I forgot to mention Christina and Clara Byam, who lead the Klezmer Institute with Zev Feldman. So yeah, she knows very well this region, and she was like, oh, this sounds very. Anyway, so sometimes it's even hard to distinguish. There are like styles differences, and so but I think it's the same. It's that this process of exchanging um, what is it that is being exchanged? I am not exactly sure, but it's a flow um, because music is not a static thing, right? So so I think it very much you can find it in a lot of I mean, you can certainly find a lot of American influence in Yiddish music in the US. And I mean, I don't know if it's the exact same process as what was going on in Europe before when klezmer like shaped itself in a way, but it's a never ending process. So I yeah, of course.
Emily Bayer asks, I'm a new student to these songs. In the songs you performed, were there formal constraints on the poems? So for example, in the two Taylor songs, what is the meter or form there?
I'm not sure. Like technically I can't answer right now. I could ask around, but I'm not sure. Yeah. I haven't done that kind of like formal analysis of the poem.
Emily Bayer is saying she's just they're just curious. But I would ask a follow-up question: are the majority of songs that you perform rhymed, or do they are they syllabic, or how are they constructed in the lyrics, I should say?
I really haven't observed them in that way enough that I can respond at the top of my head now. But I'm happy to discuss this poetic questions. They're interesting.
You know, when you take a manuscript from the archive, and it has musical notations, can you walk us through, are there techniques that you have to reinterpret that no longer accord to contemporary musical notation practice? Are there things that are unique or that set these Yiddish manuscripts apart in any way?
I will say that this is a very, very hot conversation right now in the Kieselguth-Makonovetsky digital project right now. And I really encourage then, I mean, if you're interested in that type of question, I really encourage you to join. There is a KMDMP discussion group where people working on the manuscripts post images of the manuscripts and ask questions. What do I do with this sign here that I'm not sure what? And it's really interesting that all backgrounds help. Like this is it's very interesting that this project. It's a bit, my response is a little bit off, but I will try to circle back. I think it's very interesting that this particular project, the choice was made to make everything available before any editing process, which is the opposite of what's generally done when an archive is found. One or maybe two people work on it. They do a whole lot of editing work, and then they put it out. And in the meantime, it's closed. It's like, no, don't look at it. We're going to be stolen or whatever. Not always. Sometimes they're open anyway. But this is a bit of a caricature. But anyway, so that was anyway the choice that was made to make everything available and then collectively work on it. And it's really powerful in terms of knowledge making, because you actually need so many skills to decipher those manuscripts that not one person can have them, or even two. So we have people who come from Baroque music, like Adrian Greenbaum, people who have knowledge of certain repertoires, Hasidic repertoires like Jordan Hirsch, or Russian speakers, people who can recognize a certain type of handwriting in a certain language. So it's a multi-language, it's very, very layered. So I forgot what the question was, but basically, yeah, there are a lot of questions, I remember now, coming out of those manuscripts. They're definitely not obvious. I don't know if I could say that there is anything absolutely specific to them. This is really a question I would ask the group what they think about this, everyone that's engaged with the material, but it's quite fascinating to look at this. And then when people join the project, they have access to everything else that everyone has digitally notate. So it's like now we have all these sheet music that we can use to perform it, and it's all Creative Commons. It's all in the open, so it's really fantastic.
I think that leads to a question that Cherry Marion also just put in, and I'm jumping around. I will be sure to pass on all questions to Eleonore for those who have asked. Is how faithful do you personally feel you must be to a written archival source?
To what?
To an how faithful do you feel you have to be to the manuscripts, to the archival material in your performances?
Well, see, I mean, I took two different songs, and I mean two sources of the same song and mashed them up the way I've connected the most with them, and maybe the way it also just was easier in my mouth, or the criteria can be diverse. So it's a tricky question. It's a tricky question because yeah, I mean, I want to be faithful to the material, but I also don't want to feel limited in my artistic choices. And I think everything can be okay. Anything can be okay. And some people take it a lot further than I do. I mean, I'm pretty close to the source, but this is I don't know. This is closer to my way of expressing myself now. It can change. Yeah, I'm not making any commitment to stay that close to the source, but there is definitely maybe a level of it's more about curiosity, I think, than faithfulness. It's like a genuine curiosity towards the source, and also an understanding of the context, whatever we do with it, to understand as much as we can, or try to understand as much as we can, the context from where it's from. And I think that's maybe more important in a way than what we eventually do with it. I mean, we can take it apart and do completely collage, assemblage, whatever we want with it, but electronic distortions, whatever, everything's okay.
Okay, I think we'll take one more question before we say thank you. And this is a more technical question from Michael Bell that was asked, is there a special way that you position your violin so that you can sing while freeing up your jaw?
I have tried, and maybe I'll work on it again. So there is a possibility to play like this, um, so that the neck stays like free. But for me, it's actually harder to stay on pitch on the violin if I play like this. I mean, I need to practice that position a lot more. So for now, I still sort of have my violin placed the way I usually play, and just try to not like constrain my neck too much or my chest. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, now we've asked you questions about archival practices, creative practices, musical practices, and you've given us a lot to think about. So I just like to give one more hand, and I see lots of claps. So it's all in the process, and I want to thank everyone for coming today. And I look forward to seeing you all at future Mayrent events. And I'm going to put, if you stay for 1 minute, I'm just going to put a few more links into the website so you can, into the chat box, so you can continue to enjoy the work of Eleonore after today's event. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you Sunny, and thank you the Mayrent Institute. It's been very fun.
I'm going to